here. I'm also very sick, so I'm not staying, and that's why I haven't come over and shaken people's hands. I've been battling the flu all week. My wife and 2 kids are home. Like, it's a mess in my house. So I'm going to introduce this, and then, if you please, I'm going to take my leave. Brain is so foggy. So Ann Mahoney's here. She's a city councilor too and represents the entire city, but is from Ward 4. So I think this is the first community meeting of mine that she's come to as an at-large councilor. So welcome. And I'm going to leave her in charge. Why not? She's here. Just by way of very brief introduction, I think if you got my letter about tonight, then you probably got my letters about the previous iterations of this project in which I expressed my opposition. And there was some sort of funky thing with the attorney who was representing the developer at the time, or the property owner at the time, had his own community meeting one night in the middle of the summer. I don't know if anyone went to that. They emailed me an hour before the meeting, and I was on vacation up at Storylands with my family. And so I said, okay, well, good luck. I mean, I don't, it was, the way this thing has got to tonight has been a train wreck of sorts in terms of development. So they brought Bill Phelan involved, he's the attorney now. And Bill called me, he says, you know, what do you want to do? And I said, well, it's been the whole rollout of it and the presentation to the community has been a mess. Like, I don't think people fully understand what's going on or what they're trying to do or what it's about. So he had the suggestion to pull back the material that was the application that was filed before the zoning board, and essentially hit the reset button. So that's what the purpose of tonight is. There's nothing filed with the zoning board. You wouldn't need any board approval, right? Just the zoning board. So the only body that would permit this in the city would be the zoning board. They need a variance before the zoning board. And so there'd be a public hearing, a public process. Obviously, you folks would be able to participate in. I would let you know when that is through my letters that you guys are getting. But so they don't have anything filed. They withdrew, right? You guys withdraw that or table it?
Yeah, I think it was withdrawn last time. I wasn't involved with that.
Okay, so it's
I don't
withdrawn.
know what happened to it.
Complete reset.
from there.
If they proceed, it'll be a new application, which
That's
I
right.
was just talking to Ann about it. It's probably the earliest they could get on an agenda would be about a month or so. So there's plenty of time for me to notify you guys, tell you where, if you wanted to weigh into the zoning board, you could. Sorry, usually better at this, but I'm going to leave it. It's a small enough group that Bill can just answer your questions, make a small presentation to you. I'm going to leave some business cards up here. If anybody has anything they want to chat with me about related to this project, or usually I find I get half my constituent requests about potholes and this and that at these kind of meetings, so feel free. I ask, maybe leave me alone tomorrow, Saturday or Sunday, call me or email me, and I'll work on whatever you got, okay? Beyond that, does anyone have any questions or anything before I turn it over to Bill and or Ann and I leave?
You're excused.
You had a baby
Good night.
since the last meeting.
So actually,
Congratulations.
yeah, shut that off for a second. Videotapes them, and as much of a pain in the neck he is sometimes, it's actually a pretty good resource to have some of the meetings that otherwise wouldn't be filmed. So,
Go.
yeah, okay, I'm leaving. All right, and if you want to say anything, and then turn it over to Bill, okay? So my cards are there. Email me, call me. I'm very sorry. All right, have a good night, everyone.
Take care.
Okay, why don't you say hello?
I'm just gonna say hello to everybody. I already said hello to everybody. So I was coming to attend Brian's meeting, but Brian's leaving, so I'm gonna be turning this over to Bill. I'm gonna be learning about this just like you are, because the first time I heard about it was in the paper, and I'm glad that we're having, yeah, I'm glad it's happening. We're glad.
That's what you get for being a rookie, right?
And there were a lot of people that reached out to me too, so more than in this room. So, but we're just here to learn about what's going on, like Brian said. They haven't filed or anything. When they do, that's when the community will be able to voice their opinions, their actions. So we're going to turn over to Bill and let Bill give his presentation to his client.
My client actually went to City Hall. Thought the meeting was there for some reason, I'm not sure why, but, so that's where he went. So he's on his way back, but I just want to, by way of introduction, he's not a stranger to the neighborhood by any stretch of the imagination. He's lived there for many, many years. And yeah, he's owned the home for over 10 years. And he's lived there for over 10 years on the corner of, as I understand it, on the corner of Interville and Center Street. His sister also lives either on Rodman or on Trafford. Excuse me?
They bought up the whole neighborhood, that gentleman.
Well, he's
Several
bought a lot of
houses,
properties.
Yeah.
Well, he's not somebody who's fly by night. He's lived there for
Yeah.
over a decade, and
Yeah.
he's, he's not a stranger to the neighborhood. And I know the neighborhood's changed, as the whole city has, quite frankly, over the years. It just has. A lot of folks, sold their homes and sold their properties and moved out. New folks come in, and that's kind of the way it is. And I looked at a lot of the properties in the neighborhood and looked at what was on, how big of lots there are in the neighborhood. And the two lots that we're talking about, it's a Residence B district, which allows for multifamily use. It's mostly multifamily homes. Years ago, you had mostly owner-occupied housing in the area, and people would rent to either family members or others. And now it's less that. It's more investment properties for a lot of people. I think a new project, in my opinion, and I know it's not shared by everybody, really helps the area. It helps the area's home values. It's not an area that's plagued with traffic. The traffic is basically the traffic in the neighborhood. It's not as if additional units, it's not a big apartment building that's being proposed. They're townhouse-style properties that will have sufficient parking, so people won't be parking on the street. There's going to be 2-car garages proposed underneath the units. You can see similar developments throughout the city, and quite honestly, a lot of them are very well maintained. They're like the 2 families, the 3-family, the 4-family houses that were built many years ago. Only now construction is different and architecture is different, and you have 2 oversized lots, one over 15,000 square feet, one about 13,000 square feet lots. Let me talk about the first project across from the school, which is on the corner of Tabor and Interlochen Street.
Can I interrupt one second? I
Yeah.
apologize. I just want to make sure it's the same person that owns both properties.
No, they're
No.
brothers. They're brothers. So, they don't own the same property. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not sure which brother owns which. So when they get here, I'll try to straighten that out, and I'll have him introduce himself, tell you how long he's lived in the area, who
Well,
else
that
lives in
doesn't,
the area.
that doesn't really matter because he obviously only bought it for investment property. He has no ties or desires to improve Quincy. So
Well,
I don't know if he's lived here 10 years or,
yeah,
if you told me that he grew up there, I might feel differently, but
I don't know, 10 years.
that's just my opinion, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. I mean, I know there's a feeling amongst a lot of residents that development is, the city's being overdeveloped. There's a lot of traffic in the city, and depending upon the neighborhood and the area, you see more of it than less of it. But and I think a decade is pretty long. I mean, I think it's over. I think it's like 14 years or 15 years, which I think it's a pretty long time. It's not somebody that just bought it, hasn't lived there, and in any event, it's a Residence B neighborhood, It's zoned for multifamily. What's being proposed is not allowable under the zoning ordinance for different reasons, but not, the least of which is not the number of units. They would be able to build multiple units on both sites, but not the number of units that they're
Right.
proposing.
The one across from the preschool,
Mhm.
so it's for multifamily.
Yeah,
That house, that house already is a multifamily house over there. It's multiple mailbox, on the outside of the house.
could you say that again, please?
The one across from the preschool, the parking lot.
Yeah, yeah.
That one, I don't know, like knows how many family they have changed to our apartment, because it's like 2 or 3 or 4 mailbox on the outside.
Yeah,
So, and on top of that, they propose for 3 more unit townhouse
Right.
behind the house,
that's right.
and there will be too many houses for that, and school in the morning, there are too many cars over there. It's
Yeah.
really bad, because I live around the corner, we walk, when my kids went to the preschool, we just like 5-minute walk around the corner.
Sure.
There's no car, no parking over there at all.
Right.
People will be blocking that on Table Street into Lockman Street. So,
Okay, so let me address your concerns, or try to.
yeah,
3 units that have sufficient parking for the zoning. It's required to have 2 parking spaces per unit, and they would. So the parking spaces would be sufficient to not,
but there's no guarantee how many people will be moving in those
that's true.
apartments.
And that's true with, and quite honestly, that's true with all lots. So you have a lot that's at least a double lot, probably larger, that instead of 2 units, they're proposing 3 units on it. On a lot the size that would probably, otherwise, you in a single family or a double family?
Single family.
Single
It used to be 2 family, but
But you
when
changed it,
the guy bought it, he flipped it, he changed it to single family.
Yeah, but it was a 2-family, and it was probably zoned for a 2-family at the time, just like this portion of the lot. The only reason it's 1 lot on that parcel is because it's in common ownership. When it originally was divided, you can see that there were 2 lots the same size as just about every other lot in the area. And what I do is, I'll go on Google Map, or I'll go on the city's GEO map. If you plug in City of Quincy GEO map, you can have like a bird's eye view of the lot sizes in that
I don't
area.
need to go get the map, I live in that corner, I can go up there,
Yeah, well, go
see
ahead,
that.
yeah, no, that's fine, but what I'm trying to say.
If there used to be a house over there, they knocked it down whatever 30, 40 years ago, I'm against for building 3 townhouses over there. If he can, whatever, like, and then how many people, how many apartments on that same big single family over there right now? So like 3 or 4 mailbox on the outside. So I don't know how many people are living over there. So they're like parking and whatever, there's a big issue
Yeah,
over there.
just right now, I think it's a 2-family, but I'll make sure before we leave here tonight, I'll let you know. My understanding is a 2-family on the site right now. But I don't want to say that with certainty until my client gets there, and he'll let you know how many people are there.
I just want, the building he's talking about, the townhouses,
Yeah,
they initially said 3, and
Right.
there was no one opposed to it.
that's what he was gonna do.
Okay, but, all right, so they wound up sticking 4, what he's talking about.
No, he's talking about the project.
I'm talking about like.
He's
I'm
talking about the
talking-
project
I'm
on
talking-
The other end is-
so
So I
like-
just want to tell you some of the
Yeah.
frustration that you have
Yeah.
is, you understand.
Yeah,
And in the paper, it said they were gonna put 5 units times 2, 5 units in each area that.
about this project?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah, so
I
the
spoke
3
with a ledger reporter on the phone very briefly.
So the 3 changes.
I don't know where he got his information. The information I gave Brian
Yeah.
and I did a little write-up on it, and plenty of time, and he told me he was gonna mail it out, which I assume he mailed out with the project. And I had also the diagram of the units, because that's all we've done so far,
Right.
since I've become involved in it, because I don't wanna go any further. I wanna first have the neighborhood meeting and propose, yeah.
It's like changing the landscape of our neighborhood. I've been there over 40 years.
Yeah.
I don't like seeing condos, townhouses, like, I mean, you can't stop it,
Yeah,
but it's just like, it shouldn't be so many. It's like every piece of little land's been
Yeah.
taken up.
yeah.
There's nothing, there's no space.
I think that,
And there's children, there's a school there, and the traffic is bad now. You don't think it's a lot of traffic, but it is.
no, I know there is, but it's, I would tell you that I don't think it's from
Yeah.
the houses. I mean, the traffic is, during the school time, is mostly from the parents and folks bringing their kids to school. I think, 3 townhouses in that area, I don't think it's gonna add a lot of traffic. I can
But it adds
appreciate,
some.
if
But
I
it
can just
adds
finish
some.
responding to the comments first. I mean, I know, I can tell I'm not gonna be able to convince you, but I
No,
do
not
wanna
at
at least
all.
respond and give you
No,
my
you're right,
perspective.
and that was disrespectful, and I
Yeah, that's, no
apologize.
worries, no worries at all. But what I was gonna say is, I can appreciate you talking about changing the landscape of the city, or changing the character of the city, but these are gonna be nicely built, handsome townhouses. They're not apartment buildings, they're not cheap buildings by any stretch of the imagination. They're not being built by a developer who is not a neighbor, which he is, and who is not gonna be living in the area, which he is. And he has a right to build on that location because of the size of the lot and the fact that it's a Residence B district. Does he, and I said at the beginning, he doesn't have a right, unless he gets permission, to build that many units, but I'm not sure that the additional unit on that site is gonna put anything over the edge one way or the other. I think it's gonna improve it, and I think it's gonna improve the house values in the neighborhood as well. The house that's there is going to stay there. The wrought iron fence is going to be there. If you know the lot and the house, the side yard is not really anything to look at. It's on the side area. It's not really visible from Interville Street. It goes down to an area where it's almost like a dead end down that way because of the other development in the back, the department store that was built back there. It's not really a cut-through street. I'm talking about Tabor Street.
Oh, Tabor.
Yeah, so the corner of Interville, and then you take a right, you go down to Tabor, away from the school, kind of. And that side yard isn't like, a nicely landscaped yard like the front of the house is and the wrought iron fences, which is really a nice-looking home. He's not doing anything to that home. He'll keep that up nice. And honestly, I think that the units that would be constructed would be an improvement to what's there. Is it filling in a vacant lot, so to speak? Yes, it is. And I understand people, don't always want to see that, but it's not going to take away from the aesthetic view from Interville Street at all. And I don't know that it's going to really create a lot of traffic either. And it's going to be nice, new townhouses.
How many levels, do you know that?
Yes, it's 2.5 story. Well, let me make sure I don't.
Say 3-story over
3 stories, 3 stories. So there'd be, I'll get right to you. There'll be a garage on the floor, two-car garage underneath, and then 2 stories above. So the bedrooms would be on the 3rd floor, and the kitchen, dining room, and living room on the 2nd floor. and that would be the design. You had a comment first, I wanted to address that.
Well, no, I mean,
So I'm gonna take it separate, that's the one on the corner interval of Taylor Street.
yeah, I mean, I'm opposed, number one, I don't live in the neighborhood, I'm from North Quincy.
Okay.
I work in the area.
Yeah.
I've done work at that school, all right? So to say that there's no impact on traffic, you can't drive around Quincy and not see, as they said, every single little piece of land being overdeveloped. And that's my opinion. I mean, I think, and yes, they're beautiful buildings. I'm sure it's gorgeous
Yeah.
for the time being. And he's doing nothing to the house for the time being, all right? But
No.
I moved to Quincy 20 years ago, all right? So I'm not from here, but I moved here 20 years ago. And I moved here because it was a neighborhood of houses. And I don't care whether they're two-family houses, single-family houses, they were little yards, nice little houses, all right? So now it's becoming a Charlestown, it's becoming a Somerville. And no disrespect to those cities, but I didn't move there because I wanted a neighborhood city. And this is changing.
Yeah.
And every time you put in a townhouse as opposed to a house, you're adding cars and you're adding traffic, all right? 3 townhouses, let's assume that they only have 2 cars and that's it. Is that a major impact on the neighborhood? No. All right, but I believe there's already 2 other townhouse units going up. That's at least 3 or 4 units. So now it's their traffic's being added to that spot. You're not that far away from Crown Colony with that monstrosity that's going on up there. All right,
Plus the 3
so-
townhouses that were added at the end of Branch.
So, I mean, it's like, so if you individually look at every single development, I can say, well, yeah, they're nice, they're cute, I feel bad for the guy that bought the property, he has a right to develop it, fine, let it go, all right? But that is happening in almost every single neighborhood, in every little piece of land.
Well,
That's my
yeah,
objection.
No, I can get it, and let me try to, give a different point of view. And I know, I mean, I was there at the beginning stages of another kind of real estate boom area, time as well. And then I was at the end of that, when you couldn't, the Home Depot store parking lot was empty, and you couldn't see a crane or a man that was working, or a woman that was working in the trades anywhere. They were all unemployed. And it always goes in cycles. And cities, including Quincy, change, and they have to change, and they have to grow.
Not like
Traffic,
this.
well, no, listen, traffic is caused by a lot of different things, okay? And it's not just new construction. That's not the only issue with traffic.
No, I understand that, I
and-
understand that. But what happens, so everything goes in cycles, all right?
Yeah.
And I voted for you, so now I'm almost a little disappointed that I voted for you.
Well, hey, listen, I wear a couple of different hats,
Everything goes in cycles, so.
I'm not running again, so I go.
We're not disappointed that we voted for him, but we're disappointed to see him standing up there.
I mean, so now,
Don't be.
everything comes in cycles, so
Yeah.
we're, in my opinion, overdeveloping.
Yeah. I
Greatly
know.
over. So what happens when everything crashes? And people move out of Quincy, or people can't afford to live in Quincy? Then you have empty units, empty townhouses that people aren't keeping up, and it just adds to the blight.
Yeah. I
Which is
think,
what we're supposed to be
I think
fighting.
honestly, the blight won't be the new townhouses. It's the older housing stock, first of all. And secondly, all the studies, I mean, I'm not the expert, but all the studies, including the, Metropolitan Planning Council studies, and every study that you look at, I mean, Governor Baker was on the television the other day saying, we need housing, we need more housing, we need more housing. There are studies out there that show there is an extreme shortage of housing, not a glut of housing. And I'm not saying it should all be built in Quincy, but there's a study that says, in fact, more housing has to be built in Quincy.
Why?
Now,
But
because people need places to live,
But
and
they-
because
they-
rent is going up so high in Boston that people are moving out of Boston.
I couldn't afford to rent in Quincy. I
No.
owned in Quincy, but I couldn't afford to rent
Exactly,
in Quincy.
but that's one of the reasons why you need more housing. It
No.
drives, it keeps the market in check. I don't know what to say, but other than, listen, there is a shortage of housing. If you if you look at any study across the state regarding housing, unanimously, they will say there's a shortage of housing. So, I mean, I'm not saying
I
that,
just have one more comment to make,
Yeah.
and then I'm not gonna talk. But if that's the case, I mean, I also read a lot of studies where Massachusetts is one of the few states where people are actually leaving because housing is so expensive, jobs are hard to come by. And I'm maybe not metropolitan
Mhm.
Boston area, all right? But I've read those studies too.
yeah,
All right, so if people are leaving, and if people need housing, and I don't doubt that they do, if they're happy, build them someplace else. I mean, I don't understand, Quincy does not have to be the only place. And as far as I'm concerned, it's got nothing to do with people feeling compassionate that people need a place to live, and Quincy's a great place to live. I'm
it's
gonna
about
go.
money.
It's about money,
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
so,
People are looking to make money in a market that is good, and I don't disagree with you.
but then the residents, the people that are here are the ones that are gonna suffer in the long run. That's why
And
I'm
that's
against
where
it.
I'm not so sure I agree with you with regards to this project, because I don't think there's really gonna be a lot of suffering. In fact, I could make a pretty good argument to the contrary. The area on the corner of Center Street and Interville Street is a walking distance from the train station, where you want to have new housing. It's not, we're not proposing a big apartment building. We're proposing nice townhouse buildings with, plenty of parking underneath. And I think overall, it's gonna improve the housing values. And one of the problems about not being able to afford to rent Quincy, it's because of the fact that there's not enough housing. The more housing there is, the less the housing is gonna cost, or at least it's gonna equal it out. But I understand there's a feeling in the community, in the city, that we're being overdeveloped, because you see, in a time of prosperity, when a lot of people are developing now, whereas, it wasn't too long ago, you wouldn't even see a deck being put on a house. It's a big change, and it is, and it does go in cycles, I agree. But I honestly believe that this type of housing is good, solid housing, and it's not gonna be the type of housing that is gonna take away from the neighborhood. It's gonna add to it. But
I have a question. So, for both lots, for both projects,
yeah.
how many more family or units would there be? So,
Okay,
as of
3
now-
in the one and 7 in the other. So the single-family house on the corner of Interville and Center Street
yeah,
would be torn down, and so would the garage that's kind of like down the street a little ways down Interville.
okay, yeah,
So that lot would be leveled,
okay,
and there would be 7 townhouses built within that lot, all with its own parking
okay.
and a courtyard area and,
So you're adding,
So
how
from-
many more, so I guess, how many
7.
more families?
7.
Would you say? So 7 more families
Yes.
altogether? With that being said,
Mhm.
is there any talk about building another elementary school in this section of the city?
Actually, yes, there is. I guess the city just purchased a St. Mary's Church School,
Okay.
which is gonna be torn down. There's gonna be a new elementary school
Is-
built there.
I have no idea.
Is,
Wow.
the only reason I ask is
It's on it, doesn't mean
because,
it's an ask.
Oh, well, yeah, I think that's.
That's the plan, but we don't know how long that's gonna be.
It could be a middle
Okay.
school.
thank you. You have an elementary school that's already a requirement, the
Mm-hmm.
one that we're in right now. You have a middle school that's under construction. Tons of condos went up within 5 years on Quarry Street. You have the new ones going up now. And a planned project for more going up over at the quarries.
Right, and those are different types of housing.
No,
but
no, no,
I
but
understand.
I'm talking numbers as far as
Mhm.
numbers.
Yeah,
Well, I understand that there needs to be more housing, not necessarily in Quincy, because I oppose this project as well. Is there any way that there can be like a stop order until the community is ready to house the kids that are about to be living in this neighborhood. Because of right now, it just doesn't make, like, the numbers aren't adding up. You want to build more housing when the school isn't even built yet, it's not even thought of, I don't even know if there's plans for it. This, right, this school cannot hold any more kids, and there's a middle school that's, it's half torn down and being built up. I just think that, I understand that progress has to happen, but I think there needs to just be more, the time plan, is it fitting in with the rest of the community?
I think that the timing often goes with the economy, and that's when there's, a growth period, there is, and when there isn't, there isn't. And I think over time, we've seen, the city is definitely changing. Its proximity to Boston is such that, in transportation changing, and people wanting to live in more urban areas, it's inevitable that Quincy is beginning with people selling their homes that have lived here all their lives, or their families selling their homes that have lived here all their lives. It's just an inevitability that Quincy is going to be changed. One of the, when I was in office, one of the concerns is, how do you change? Change is happening.
I understand,
We can all be certain of that, right?
I understand.
And, how it changes is really more of a function than whether it changes. If you don't grow as a city, you're not going to be able to buy land for a new elementary school, because there's not going to be any money to build a new elementary school. Growth is necessary. People talk about traffic. I used to say, drive down, the center of Brockton, and you're not going to get stuck in a traffic jam. It's a desirable place to live, and it's growing, and that adds money to the tax dollars.
It's not-
This type of housing,
What you said about not having the money to build schools, I kind of have to laugh at that, considering that houses were taken for eminent domain for a football field over in North Quincy.
So,
I'm sorry.
I don't want
I'm
to go
sorry,
there.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying,
That's on the other
I'm
side
just
of
saying,
that.
I understand your argument, but you have to see where
I do,
yeah.
I do, but my point is this. If you're not growing as a city, you're going to be in trouble financially.
I understand, I get
There's no
that,
question about that.
I get that.
So here's someone who lives in a neighborhood for how long? Who lives in the neighborhood?
can you introduce them?
No.
24 years,
How many?
24 years.
24 years. And he wants to build in his neighborhood, and he wants to build housing that are townhouses that I believe fit good with the character of the neighborhood. It's not somebody building an apartment building or 600 units or 400 units where, they bought the land, they probably sold it after it was permitted, and then some, real estate company bought it. These are people that have lived in the neighborhood, that they're gonna remain in the neighborhood.
I understand that it's not a huge,
Yeah.
I get it.
Mhm.
But do you understand where our kids, I live right on Roberts. So it's very difficult for me to sit there and be okay with this project when there's a class of 502 kids in a school that at one point they were using a closet for a classroom.
Right.
I understand the need for progress, but there also has to come with some sort of give and take. You can't sacrifice, you can't sit there and say, oh, well, it's only gonna be townhouses and they're gonna be family oriented. Well, you're not taking into consideration the kids that already live in this neighborhood that are being forced into oversized classrooms.
I have
That's-
to say, right, the schools and how many students there are and whether the population is going up or down, I profess at this point in time, I've been out for a while, so ignorance. I think the overcrowding in the elementary schools have more to do with districting than they do with the number of students. I don't think the number of students has increased dramatically.
So I can get you on the books of saying that there might need to be a redistricting of the schools?
Hey, if I were in office, that's something that I think should have been looked at, because you know, populations change, and I honestly think that if one elementary school is overcrowded, then there could be an adjustment. That comes with all kinds of other concerns, believe me. Some people
I
want it,
understand.
some people don't.
And I get that,
And
like
you
the
open up-
Verrazani district, I get it.
But I don't think it's necessarily, you know, and coming back to this project, the overcrowding is a situation that's caused by growth. I don't think that's the case.
I
might be
can
wrong.
see, I can see that, but at the same token, the overpopulation tends to be predominantly in areas where there is more multifamily units
Yeah,
than there is single-family homes.
yeah, I don't disagree with that. You know, I love debating things.
No, no,
If
I'm
you
sorry.
haven't
I
figured it
actually
out
also
yet,
have
I mean,
a
I'm
second-
just
a second
a pain in
question.
the act, and I, you know,
Okay, so after your question, then we're gonna go back to the development.
That's fine.
I have a lot of, you know, I like to back up things with facts. And I don't necessarily agree with the underlying supposition that the overdevelopment means that, you know, this school is overcrowded. And I also don't think it necessarily means that there's gonna be more, you know, that much more traffic from townhouses being built as opposed to big apartment
Right.
buildings being built. I just don't think that's the case. And I don't really think there's a lot of supporting data that, you know, to suggest that.
Okay.
I also believe that this type of construction in this neighborhood is actually good for the neighborhood, because I think it brings up property values for the residents that are there. I think there is an older housing stock. Some of the houses, like the one on the corner of Interville and Tabor Street, you know, it's a beautiful house.
Gorgeous.
It would be a shame to tear a house like that down, because it's a beautiful house. But when it was built, there was a lot next door that, I think you said there used to be a single-family house on, or
I don't
another
know, maybe
structure.
from
Yes.
30, 40 years.
But it
ago,
was
only have
clearly
two
a
lots.
separate lot. The only reason it's combined into one lot now is because it's one owner. They automatically, by law, you know, join lots. Or somebody bought it with the intention of keeping it like that. But the lot that we're proposing the 3 units on is the size of a lot that there are 3-family houses on, all over the neighborhood, and 2-family houses on, all over the
Is
neighborhood.
this the, and the
Only
three,
these will be newer.
and this is the one right next to the house on the
That's-
corner?
That's correct.
With that being said, my second question was, is it gonna look anything like the project that's on the corner of Independence Ave across from Friendly's? Where you have a gorgeous farmhouse, and literally the space in between the house and those townhouses
That's a good question.
is like
That is
this,
a good
because
question.
that looks like a 3-year-old built it.
Yeah, no, that's 5 feet, that's approximately 5 feet away from one another. This is gonna be, you know, probably 11 feet from the other house,
Okay.
10 or 11 feet.
So you know, I mean, that.
I know
it looks-
exactly the house you're talking about.
It's ridiculous looking. And I think a lot of people in this neighborhood were worried, because even though we don't live in that neighborhood, they were worried it was gonna look that
Yep,
ugly to the neighborhood.
right. What we could do, you know, I mean, because it's in the preliminary stages, I could get a rendition of what it would actually look like. And we can superimpose, they have, it's amazing what can be done now. But it's hard to ask for a large investment, you know, without an understanding of, you know, where the neighborhood's at. But I'd like to, you know, maybe if we do file, maybe have, you know, meet beforehand, and I'll have a nice photo with the actual townhouses superimposed on the lots from different angles, so that you can, you know, see what it actually will look like. And I think that might be helpful. But I know the concern is, from what I understand, it's changing the character of the neighborhood, the traffic, and the overcrowding of the schools is what I'm hearing. Are there any other comments that anybody would like to make, or suggestions?
I just think it's.
But,
over-
the suggestion I have, if you
Yeah.
say about, maybe get another meeting, how they gonna build a house, put it in on a slideshow, put on like a projector so we can see it better,
Yeah,
what's actually gonna build on that lot.
yeah, that's what I just suggest, I think that's a good suggestion. I can, what I'd like to do is take everybody's name and address and contact information if I could, and I can send you, I'll send you the information directly, or I can send it to Brian and give it to you if you want to give Ann your information. I don't need it, I can just give, I can send Brian, your ward counselor, that information. If you just give Ann your
I think I
name and your
collected
contact
Yeah.
I think
info.
I collected everything.
You have the address, Ann?
I have
the,
email address.
Email address, good.
Email address is Sherman. So Bill, let me ask you a question just to bring it back to development. So each of these developments, they both need zoning, they both need variance.
Both need variances.
So I think what we want to do is kind of ground this conversation, because I think we've got a lot of concerns in the room. So for them to be able to build anything, it has to go for
The zoning board.
board. And if there's concerns in this room, your voices still can be heard at the zoning board.
Absolutely.
This is conversations to allow us all in the community to understand what's going to be potentially going there, and I think it's gonna be helpful if you could see what's going to be going there as well, and then the number of units. So it was confusing, because in the paper, it suggested that there was more than.
I don't know why I did that. I mean, again, you were all notified by Brian, right? And you got the little paragraph that I had and the diagrams that I had, and that, you know, what the paper writes. I mean,
If you give the story to Scott, it will be more accurate.
yeah,
He's-
Scott, I mean, wouldn't that, he's
He's the best reporter in Quincy.
So I think there's been loud opposition in this room in regards to, please to petition the process.
I
And I
wouldn't
understand.
character.
What's that?
I said I wouldn't character.
Our character, well, I wouldn't say that they're jumped in, but there's been other people who've also reached out in regard to the neighborhoods, with the surrounding neighborhoods saying, multiple buildings that have reached out, because there's a lot of development that is happening in this area. And you are right in the sense that this is the type of development that can happen, but it's also a time for the neighborhoods to be able to voice their concerns as well.
Sure.
And because this has to go to the zoning board of appeals, I think it's, the step before that, I think, if I'm hearing correctly from this group of people here, is that they would like to see potentially what it would look like.
Yeah,
And then,
I think that's absolutely reasonable.
does everybody feel comfortable with that, or?
I'll give you plenty, I mean,
I do.
before we apply for anything, I'll send out a rendition of what it would look like from different angles, you know, on Tabor Street, Center Street, Interville Street, and, you know, in comparison to what's there now. It's not gonna be exactly to scale, but you'll certainly be able to see how it would end up looking.
Quick question, Mayor Fallon. The addresses that you're planning on developing are what, two numbers on Interville?
126 Interville
Okay.
and 90 Interville.
So are you planning on going to zoning twice or as just one case?
Two different cases.
Okay.
Probably at the same time, just to conserve costs for the.
But there'll be two opportunities for the public to speak on each project.
Each
They'll have
project
to
is different.
present.
They're
Okay.
separate projects, so, you know, you'll be able to speak on both of them.
How about the 104, 106 one that was approved for 4 units? Do you guys have anything to do with that one?
No, that has nothing.
So that's another thing too, that there's already been developing. Have they started that one
I
yet?
don't know about that.
Right.
From what I understand, yes.
It's, yeah.
That was granted, a 4-unit.
What address so that I can go by?
They didn't have enough parking.
104.
It's like the house.
104, 106 Interville.
It's like the fourth one down, you see it, it's construction.
Yeah, well, I want to know because I want to be able to
Right by it.
talk with the architect who's doing this project and maybe make sure that, you know, we don't make any repeat mistakes
It takes away the whole
right.
look. I mean, we're used to 2 families and
Yeah.
single families, but this 3, 5 to 10, I mean, it's getting.
That's what I'm saying, it's like, if they're not all of a multiple family, if they're not big enough to build one, I can agree with building one, but building 3 is too many.
I agree.
Can I ask one other question, though? On 126 Interville, what's there now currently? You said they're going to be taking out a garage?
There's a garage and a single-family home.
So a single-family home? now.
126 is I wanna make sure I have them right.
You have it listed as a non-conforming two-family dwelling.
Okay, so 90 is the, 90 Interville is the bigger lot. So
the-
on 90 Interville, Ann, there's, what is there, a single-family home on 90 Interville?
Not
The one
this.
by Center Street,
That's a single family. That's
Single
288 Center Street.
yeah.
The address on another side.
So there's a single-family home in a garage that is on there, and you can see the size of the lot when you drive by. It's right on the corner of Center and Interville Street.
Do you have this information for the 126?
I do,
Interval?
yeah, I'll give you that. I got all my stuff, I'll give you the full copy.
I don't know. So 90 is gonna have 3 units, but they're gonna go back? Are they gonna be, is it gonna be on Center Street that they have access to?
Yeah, so 90, you'd have access to 2 units on Center Street, which is here.
Are you the bill? No, I have
And
to.
then
Leave on,
these
125,
units
yeah.
from Interville Street.
And then what about this one, where we have access to?
That's on Tabor Street.
I think we mistake.
So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna put something together with the architect. I'm gonna forward it to Brian in the news media, maybe. And then, and then, I'll wait, you can provide feedback to Brian, and I'll take it from there. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna go by 104 Interville Street, I'm gonna take a look at that project, and talk with the owner, and kind of regroup, and hopefully come up with something that you can live with, if not support. And if not, then, you know, we'll just see what happens from there, whether we file or we don't. You know, I don't know yet. But chances are we'll be filing for something. But I do want to take into consideration your concerns. I'm going to try to prepare something that might address some of the concerns that you have, and we'll go from there. That's all I can say. But thanks for coming out tonight. I know it's not, you care enough, especially if you come from North Quincy. I'm sorry I let you down. I let you down. I mean, what can I say? Man's got to make a living. He has kids in college. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.